Okay, everybody just joining the meeting, can you please mute yourself, or I will do it for you if you can't, and stop your video until public comment time, please. Once again, please stop your video and mute yourself until public comment. Thank you.
Hey, well, good evening, Somers, and welcome to the Town of Somers work session of Thursday, March 4th, 2021. And if you would please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, and be seated. Okay, so we have a busy evening tonight. We're going to start with our public hearing on the our mandate from the governor to review and come up with a Somers police reform and improvement plan. So with that, I'll make a motion to open the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. So moved. And just as a preamble, I want to thank the Somers Community Council and the Somers Community Council Subcommittee for putting this document together. It has been circulated on the website, sent out to the newspaper, and it's there for review for the general public. And this public hearing will be continued until next week. So it'll give everyone ample opportunity to review the plan. The plan, as you're reading it now, is already dated because we're going to make some edits to it. But this is the opportunity for the public to give us their comments and concerns regarding the police reform. So with that, I'll open it up to comment.
Okay, everybody joining our meeting here tonight, if you can, under reactions on the bottom of the screen, if you click on reactions and you see where it says raise hand, so you'll raise your hand and we'll address you one by one, please.
Patty, are you going to ask
Yeah,
for postings and all that?
Yeah.
Rick,
Patty, you go first. Yeah.
publishing postings?
All right. Yes. Can we, Patty, can we have publishing and posting on the
Sure.
hearing?
That was published in the Somers Record and posted on the town clerk's bulletin board on February 18th.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I'm having trouble hearing you.
Okay, so do we have anybody raising their hand for comment?
I do not at this time, no.
We don't. It's going to be the quickest public comment ever.
If you can't figure out how to raise your hand, you can actually start your video one by one and start your audio, start your video right on the bottom of the screen, please.
Nobody?
Okay.
Oh,
Wow. Good document.
He did a really good job with the document.
So, maybe just make a few remarks, Rick.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, we came together as part of a subcommittee on the Somers Community Council, and this was an effort that was mandated by the state governor, and it came down to the local municipalities to prepare a plan, and we did so. The tenets of the plan is about transparency and collaboration with the public. And I think that is most important. It's based on, a statistical review and information from the public about their collaboration, interaction with the police department. This is an ongoing issue or an ongoing activity. And so we look for public comment in that regard. And so that's why we're here. This is going to go until next meeting. We'll probably close it at that point, and then the report will be delivered to the state on April 1st. The residents went through this. They came up with a number of recommendations. The thrust of this was to look at, our training, bias training, as well as use of force, our use of force policy. And I think, what turned out to be an effort that might have been politically motivated in the beginning, as a matter of course, I think this was an opportunity. It's been a great opportunity for our police department to show how they conduct their business and share that with the community and have the community actually weigh in on that. And so that's how we find ourselves where we are. The report is on the website, and we look for comments. I'd be happy to hear some of the other, community council members make some remarks as well.
Hi, my name is Charlotte St. Rose. I'm on the committee and I'm also a Somers resident. I agree with Councilman Greco that it was an opportunity for the department, especially Chief Driscoll, to highlight a lot of the positive actions that the police department, and he in particular and his force has taken. I was also pleased to hear that, or to be in a situation where we acknowledge that different members of our community, different members of our society face different issues when when having interactions with law enforcement, from a racial perspective, from African Americans to Latino, to our Latino citizens, also to our citizens who have mental illness, to children, and that there's the idea that we should all be treated equally when we come to race and ethnicity and so forth. There is also the understanding that there are times where we should not be treated equally. When dealing with our citizens with mental illness, they should not be treated exactly the same as citizens without mental illness. When dealing with children, for example, they should not be treated the same. And so it was a great nuanced conversation that's, that acknowledged some of the challenges, but also, acknowledged the opportunities for to be better and to better serve all of us in this town. And visitors coming through as well. So I just wanted to take a moment and thank the other members of the committee for engaging in what was a complicated process, and engaging in having difficult conversations and getting through some of these difficulties to a place where we think we all are pretty satisfied with the plan we came up with, and more importantly, the understanding that this is a living and breathing document. This is not a check the box affair, right? This is where we are now, and we plan to continue with this process and plan to measure and monitor and make sure once again that Somers is a great place for all its citizens. So thank you all.
Okay.
Thank you for being on the committee.
Rick, you may want to mention, we forgot to mention that if for the people that are watching, our phone is
Oh,
not
Right.
here. It's not working. So if you're thinking about texting, it would be better to call in. We'll see the text tomorrow, but we don't have it right now. So if you need to, call in and you can make your comments.
right.
Right, so we encourage, once again, this is, our public forum. So if you could send in emails that we'll be checking, every day of the week. We've already have quite a few comments from the public that they've sent in. And I believe it's townboardtb@somersny.com. And that's a direct email link to my office. And we will read your comment and discuss it with the subcommittee. So thank you. Anyone else out there with a comment? Okay,
I have a
so,
couple of things I wanted to ask.
sure.
I just, so under number 12, you're talking about training, and just to go a little bit further from the comment that was made, is there any part in there's two things I've had some experience with that I just would like some, whether it should be in this document or somewhere else, I'm not sure. One is about dealing with people who are autistic, as I understand, having some connection with autism in New York City. And sometimes autism, you misinterpret, people could misinterpret, autistic behavior for being disrespectful, rude, rebellious, whatever. Where is that part of the training, or is that a matter that's so specific it wouldn't be in this document? I'm just wondering where that would go in the police force.
Well, as I recall, during our subcommittee meeting, Chief Driscoll did bring up the issue of how do you deal with autism, and many times there's not a lot of eye contact. And
Right, it could be misinterpreted, right?
right,
Sure.
exactly. So I know it was discussed. Well, we can get clarification, as I have to imagine under number 12, mental health, enhanced training, that that will be included.
That's what I was guessing, and I just didn't know if we become that specific or that is implied with any police training. But I know certainly in cities, and we have autistic kids, autistic people in Somers, of course, because everyone's got autistic people. And I just didn't know if that requires a special subheading, or you start listing.
I think when
You
we
can't list everything.
right, I think when we talk about the mental health issue, I mean, we could talk about schizophrenia, paranoia.
Sure.
Yeah,
So-
and I mean, and we also try to use the word, and it may have been removed for someone maybe thinking it was redundant, the neuroatypical, I think is the word.
Yes, yes, I did
that's
see it.
used. And so that's, supposed to be not necessarily a catch-all, don't want to get everybody, but the idea that there is mental illness and mental illness crises, but there are also, conditions that are chronic, like mental conditions that people have, challenges. And so we do want to, to take that into consideration. So yes, if it's not clear, we'll make sure in the next version it is clear.
So, I think also this is a document, and in a lot of sense, it's a broad document. And when we look at training with some of the specific aspects of, bias training, but we broadened it, as Charlotte had indicated, to some of the things that you might encounter, autism and so on. I think we're going to look at the type of training that they take. I mean, the training that they participate on, New York State and Westchester County, training programs, police training programs. But in a sense, if we feel that there's something that needs to be augmented, that's all part of the game. I think what's most important and most powerful here is that, this is there's going to be a residents advisory council, and there'll be an ongoing collaboration. So as things evolve and change and come up, we have a forum to deal with this. But
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes,
Chief.
Chief.
We have done training on bias and autism. Autism, 1 out of every 40, I was shocked at the number. 1 out of 47, mostly boys, by the way, it affects, are affected with autism. We're going to double the training on that, as we're going to double the training on bias. But, all of this we're talking about at this point is books. I want my officers to, from inside their hearts, to be involved. This shouldn't be just training. They should witness these things and live these things, and hands-on training is what I call it. But it's more than just books. It has to be coming from the heart. When we just trained in this and that, and put the book on a shelf, take it, and it gets dusty and all of that stuff. I don't know if I'm explaining myself.
I think that's well done.
No, right. So I have a family member who deals with autistic people in New York City. And so I've been involved with that a little tiny bit. But, saying it's so easy to misinterpret, and some of those people get in
There's
trouble
been some terrible
with the police, and has
situations.
seen those incidents. So that's what brought it to mind. The other
Yes.
thing that came to mind is, in many areas, of course, this country, the use of certain holes of what is and is not permissible. I'm certainly no expert. I have no experience in that whatsoever. Of what is and is not a permissible use of force by the police when necessary to stop somebody from doing something, or to hold them. Is that dealt with this in any way in this document?
Yes, I think it is. I think it says, well, at least from, you have my rules and procedures, we ban chokeholds or such a thing as kneeling on people's heads.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of.
Yeah,
Right.
no, absolutely. That's in our rules and procedures.
Okay,
And,
okay.
Right, which by the
So-
way, is posted on the website
Yes.
Right,
under police reform.
right.
Yeah, I was looking at that.
There's a multi-page use of force policy that the chief has adopted and written. It's quite extensive. It's almost, when you look at it and you're doing a desktop study, you're like scratching your head. How do you implement this, right?
Right.
But all those issues are dealt with, and it's open for the public to see. You go to the website under the use of force section. It's a comprehensive policy.
And in this document, Rich and Chief, you can correct me if I'm wrong, it's probably under, in a limited way, under number 5, Somers police officer will continue to use force as a last resort and explore non-lethal technology. And so it does address it there, and I'm sure we have it in even more detail elsewhere.
Yeah, I know they're getting very specific in some areas. I didn't know how specific we were going to get or that we have gotten. But, you know, there's got to be a reasonable use of force. You're the police. And then there's the part that's over the line. And that's very hard sometimes to delineate that in a document. That is the training. And as the chief says, that's in the heart of the officer. So I will count on them to do that. But my last question is about the use of cameras. I noticed in here that is a recommendation. And I was just wondering, so if I'm a police officer and, you know, I come from family, my grandfather, great-grandfather were cops in New York City, and obviously they didn't have cameras then. But if I was a teacher in a school with a camera in a classroom, it's equally of concern to some people. Not the camera, but to what extent is the access to the records of the camera, of the recordings? Is that, when does that become public information? It's very hard to do a job if every moment you're wondering, you know, what's going to happen. So how do we protect the officers when we do have that? Or is that something we're going to work through once we get a hold of cameras and we look at the policies that other forces might have, other police departments might have, not forces, but police departments might have? How are we going to deal with that to protect the
Well,
officers?
of course, we're a very transparent department here, and anything on cameras is open to the public. Unless it's in court. If there's something in court that might be used on the camera, we might not be able to release it because of that. Otherwise, I'm 100, as I said last time, I'm 2,000% in favor of cameras.
Yep.
Because the camera doesn't lie, and it helps the cops and it helps the public.
And I
Right?
would
That's
See the
assume,
truth of a situation.
it would all be foilable anyway,
Yes,
just
it
like a
would.
document.
Right. I'm
I know
sure.
that's an issue in several of the cities, you know, about to what extent is it, at what point does it become public? And, you know, it's a reasonable sort of concern.
So I would say, just to keep on task here, the report expresses an aspiration and a recommendation. I
Right.
think part of it is going to be framed in maybe a period of time. We're going to take a look at this. But the implementation is going to have all the issues that you're speaking about. We don't have cameras now. We don't understand how they're used and what are the nuances of that. So that's part of the learning and discovery process.
Yeah,
as we
maybe down
move
the road. That's
One of
another
the
good
things
question.
One of the things I'd like to address is I saw a comment up on the screen. How did we outreach to marginalized communities? And, you know, a number of years ago, I formed the Somers Community Council in an effort to get really a cross-section of the community involved with each other. So we've been meeting for a number of years, and just to that effort to see if we can get input from all corners of our community. So that's where we pulled our subcommittee from. But once the subcommittee was formed, we put advertisement in the paper about the police reform. It's in the last week's paper, this week's paper. We sent out a code red for those who have signed up, requesting public comment on the police reform just in general. And now that the document is up there, specific questions regarding what our draft plan says. So hopefully that addresses that question that someone had. Okay, Paul, anyone else there? Yes, I see a hand up.
Yeah, Rick, Jack Mattis, when I began working on this project, I had already had a very favorable image in my mind of the owner's PD. My experiences and those that I'm aware of for others have all been positive, and I'm here many years. But during the process of gathering information and listening to people, particularly Chief Driscoll, we learned that in the history of this police department, there has never been a shooting of an individual fatal or non-fatal. So when you talk about use of force, which was a question before, to my knowledge, they've been well-trained and perform well. Yes, there's more training always needed. There are new processes, new equipment, new technology, and different complexion of a population, perhaps. We're ever changing. This is a living document. What we reform today, we may need to look back on 10 years from now and laugh and say, we did nothing. There's so much more that we should have done or could have done, and we'll go on from there. Hopefully I'll be here to see it, and Chief Driscoll will be leading the department.
So let me take this opportunity just to, Jack introduced himself, but Jack has been an integral part of the review, and specifically, he's our editor of the plan. So he's been taking on a remarkable task of taking all this input and actually organizing it and putting it back out there. So a public thank you to you, Jack, for your efforts.
Jack, it's no easy task. All of us have been on committees, right, in one shape, form, or another. And it's like herding cats, right? So you brought it all together and organized it, fed it back to us, and you continue to do that. And you've worked the late hours of the evening. I know because I've called you. And well, thank you.
It's what you call me that matters.
Well, it is very well laid out, very clearly written. So, yeah, Jack did a good job.
Thank you.
All
Thank
right,
you.
so let's get back on task. Anybody else out there
Well,
with a
Ms.
comment?
Ms. Cody, I think you have a question. You have your hand up.
Not so much a question, more of a comment. Chief was talking about wanting these things to be beyond policy, to be, inculcated in the hearts of his officers. And as we were working on the document, I kept thinking that there should be a place in there somewhere for empathy. And maybe there's a way we can squeeze that in, because I think that's what you're talking about, Chief. And that's, when you talk about wanting to call it the Somers Police Service, I think service and empathy and bringing all of these procedures that we're talking about into the heart are these are all sort of ideas that are connected, and I'd love to see I'd love for us to find a place for the word empathy somewhere.
I'll try.
We empathize with you.
Yeah, there you go. Okay. Any other hands being raised out there? I did see a comment once again on the screen. Someone mentioned timetables. And with a plan like this, and I think Councilman Clinchey brought it up as well. Yeah, once again, this is our first public review of the draft. We are really responding to an executive order from the governor. So we are following those guidelines. They did not have timeframes involved in this. And I think the subcommittee did really talk about this as really a living, breathing document. Yeah, we're gonna start this right away. Annual review of certain things, biannual trainings. But that was an interesting point that someone asked. Okay, it's a great plan, but when are you going to put it into effect? What are the dates? And as it gets adopted and we circulate it, I think the plan is in motion as we speak. The chief mentioned at one of our meetings that is that day or the day before they just finished a series of trainings at a state-run training program. So the answer to that question is yes. We don't have a time frame published, but it will be ongoing and it has begun.
Yeah, I would just take a minute to thank everybody who wrote letters. We have some beautiful letters. All of them are favorable, which kind of shook me. But I would like to thank the people out there who took the time and wrote how they support the police department. It was very moving to me when I saw that in writing. Again, I want to thank the people out there who did that, who took the time and did that.
Okay, thank you. All right, anyone else? Paul, do you see anyone else?
Yeah, and I just wanted to add to Chief Driscoll. I read many of those letters as well, and living in town, it was very, very satisfying and very comforting to read those letters. I also, read the letters that are, that show that you can fully support our police service team and still also acknowledge that there's room to improve, there's room to make better. And this is, I think, Chief Driscoll, he embodies that. And that was for me, one of the best aspects of this is that you can do all that. You can support, but then you could also set the stage for continuing improvement. And so once again, Chief Driscoll, thank you. And I also thank those, folks who wrote such great letters in support of the police department, but also supported the effort to change and to continually improve.
Thank you, Chief.
Yeah, Ms. St. Rose, just to build on that, I think it's really unfortunate some parts of the country, obviously in areas that have had a lot more problems than we have. And that's one reason we live in Somers and love Somers. We don't have many. But when you have, it's sometimes it's become, you got to pick a side. I'm pro-police or I'm anti-police and pro-reforms. And I think you're right. I think everybody would agree. Who's not pro-police and who's against improvements? And so I just agree with your comment there. And again, thank you for serving on the committee and bringing that up to us.
Rick, if I'm in error, please correct me, but I believe we're posting those letters on the town website as well, ultimately.
Yeah, I think there's a link to a Dropbox where all these letters are in there. So yes, the public does have access to them.
Good.
And I don't know if we answered this in a subcommittee, but were we planning on attaching those to this plan when we submit it?
I had several of them in, and I was asked to remove them. I can go back and add to them. That's not an issue for me. I felt they should be part and parcel.
Right. I mean, I don't know that what we're being required under the executive order deals with that, but certainly I know we want to put some of our police data attached to the plan. And, I'd like to hear from the rest of the board and the subcommittee members that are here.
So I always point to the town website as being the place of record. If you go to the website for this effort, you're going to see all the letters. You'll see all the meetings that we have. They're on Zoom, and you can watch the interactions that we had when we did the meetings. You'll see the letters. You'll see the original order and the document and what we were requested to do. And you'll see some of the other, I think there are some other, I think the Westchester documents out there as well. So completely
But-
transparent. And if you go to the website, it's just, there's a lot there.
Right.
Well,
Completely transparent.
this document says from Governor Cuomo that, as I said before, every police department in New York State does not get along with its towns, with the people. I said right from the beginning, that's not so in Somers. And it's proven by these letters, it's evidenced by these letters that we're getting. And yes, I think we should put those letters in this. I don't know why we should not. If they were bad, criticizing letters, I'm sure they would be in here.
Yeah, we
That's
would.
just my
You're right.
opinion.
You're right.
Not only one side of the coin, both sides should.
Okay, so my question is asked and answered, I believe. We will have an addendum with those written comments. And that goes out for the general public. Know that if you take the time to write an email, send it in, it will be reviewed by the committee and subcommittee and included in our final report. So, anyone else for comment on the police reform? So at this time, what I'm going to do is make a motion to continue this public hearing until next week. Once again, the comment period for comment on the plan is open. You can send emails to the town board, TB meeting, town board meeting at somersny.com. Comments in that way. You can call us, you can email us. And look, all comments are welcome. And once again, this is a living, breathing document. What you're looking at today may be a little different tomorrow. And that's why we're keeping Jack Mattis very busy. Okay, let's see. Okay, yeah. So Lamar Parkin has been commenting. I failed to mention his name earlier, but he's just thanking us now for our efforts with getting this plan out. And we thank you for your thanks. Okay, so I'm going to make a motion to continue the public hearing until March 11th. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so moved. And we move on to public comment. I'll make a motion to open public comment.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so moved. And once again, public comment is an opportunity for the public to make any type of comment on any issue that is of concern to them. In this new age of Zoom, and we understand it's kind of difficult to interact with the town board if you're not tech savvy. But what we can do is do what we can to open this up. So on the screen right now, you'll see different ways that you can access this meeting. And we will keep public comment open until the end of the meeting to give everyone an ample opportunity to get in. So let's see. Okay, no, I'm just reading a chat in the chat room. So Paul, there's a member of the subcommittee that I guess they have to reconnect because she said her video's been turned off. Just check that. So Is there anyone out there now for public comment? Once again, on any type of issue? Okay, so once again, we'll leave public comment open.
And just a reminder, folks, if you want to have a public comment, you can just start your video on the bottom of the screen and then hit unmute or raise your hand, either or, and then we'll address you. Thanks.
Okay. Okay, I have a COVID update real quickly for us all. So, this has been a long time coming. And we do see, I think it's safe to say, a downward trend in new cases and active cases. In Westchester County, we're still getting positive cases, but in Westchester County, 107,587 people have been diagnosed with COVID-19, and overnight, 370 cases were identified. They're included in that 107,000. We continue to test vigorously people for COVID. And over last week, there were 37 fatalities in Westchester County. Now getting to the local level, over the past 3 days, we have seen where we have seen in the past up to 50, 60 cases, new cases a day. We are now reporting over the last couple of days. 3 days ago, we had 6 new cases identified. Day before yesterday, we had another 6. And then today, 3 new cases have been reported. If you go on the dashboard, it'll say 4 new cases, but one of those cases on my own record that I get from the county was a duplicate. They reported somebody twice.
But that's so much better than it was 30 something not too long ago, right?
Well, it
30
was
something a day,
it
even
was
more,
50
90.
It was 50 and 60 a day in months past. So
Yeah, it's
we're doing
great.
much better. So we're up to 82 active 3 days ago, 81 active yesterday, 74 active in our community today. So, I can't tell you, this has been a real tough year to get through, but the community actually has listened and we're doing the right thing. We're going to be wearing masks, just get used to it. We should have been washing our hands all along. Our moms told us about that, right? I don't know about the social distancing part, but we're going to learn how to do that a little better, I guess. But
Hey,
frankly,
Rick, can I say one thing?
when I'm finished.
Oh, okay, I thought you were done, sorry.
So when I really had some misgivings about Super Bowl Sunday, but it appears we came through that with people acting responsibly. So my thanks to the community. We're here at only 3 new cases and 74 active cases because of what this community is doing. So good job, Somers.
That's great.
Yes. Go ahead, Tom.
So Rick, I was just going to say, every day more and more vaccine appointments are opening. On the website, we have the link to sort of the state site. It doesn't include like the CVS's and those things. But if you open it and you sort of, you're watching TV or something like that and you hit refresh, every 5 minutes, it changes. People drop out, appointments open up. So just if you open it up, at 6 o'clock in the morning and you look at it and then you look at it at 6 o'clock at night, if you have time, you might be able to do that because I've seen more and more people getting appointments very soon. They did it on Saturday or Sunday and they have appointments today or tomorrow. It used to be not until April. So you just have to persevere at it and keep pressing refresh and hopefully you'll be able to get it.
Right. Good point.
Hey, Rick.
And that's on the website, right, Rick?
Yeah.
I think you put it up there, yeah.
Rick,
Yes.
you probably heard. Now, somebody said yesterday they had gotten a call that the town was having, there's a pop-up vaccine site sponsored by the town or connected to the town. They asked me yesterday, I go, I've not heard that. I talked to Kim this morning. She says that you got 3 calls in the office. Do we know anything about that? Because that looks like, I hope nobody spent any money on that because that just doesn't look right.
Okay.
You know anything about it?
Yeah, well, I don't know because we're not, number one.
Right.
This whole COVID response and vaccine rollout is totally 100% controlled by New York State. When this pandemic first occurred, Westchester County, and specifically the health department, was gearing up on how to deal with this at a local level, and probably would have included the municipalities, but that was not the case. So the state has kept the rollout very close to their vest. Only recently, when they finally got the vaccine, has the county now been involved. They do have sites that are involving some of the local hospitals. There have been pop-ups down in Northern Westchester Hospital. Have I, as a supervisor, been after the county to have a pop-up in Somers? Yes, I have. Can I report I've had success? No, I cannot. So we keep pushing for some more local distribution of the vaccine. So, seniors who don't want to travel down to White Plains or even to Northern Westchester Hospital. And as mentioned previously, there are a number of homebound individuals that can't get out to get a vaccine. So the county has asked us to collect names of people who are homebound, and that includes seniors and people who are compromised. And when the county, and they are planning a mobile unit to go out and visit homes. All that is planned. I know of no concrete information I can report at this time. So no, the town is not spending any money on pop-ups at this point.
No, I said last night, I said, that sounds like either a joke, but 3 people did call your office, or a hoax. And I just hope nobody spent any money on a hoax.
Yeah, I'm not quite understanding how money is involved in that, but.
Well, I'm just thinking if somebody said, because I understand it was on a phone call, give us I'm just wondering now. I don't know if this happened, give us a credit card and you're all set up. Call the supervisor's office and you'll have an appointment, which is.
Yeah, no, I've been making no calls.
No, you, no, I didn't mean you.
Yeah, no, I know you didn't. No. So no, like I said, this is at the state and county level at this point. And we are trying, once again, just for the Somers community, we are trying to get some resources in this town. Look, if they would deliver vaccine to our pharmacies in town, they're all geared up. They have thousands of names of people that they can give the vaccine to. They just need the vaccine. So yeah, let me just spell that right away. Okay, so moving on, our next agenda item is Northern Westchester County Wireless Master Plan. And Anthony and Bill had been involved with the formation of our telecommunications task force. And this was really basically an outgrowth of, we've had frustrations with NYSEG over the years, but now with everyone locked at home, people going to school from home, the internet and cable has been an integral utility. And we felt the same way we took NYSEG to task, we should be looking at the utilities and at the telecommunications companies the same way. In addition to that, Somers, along with a number of other municipalities in Northern Westchester, have gotten together and through a Westchester County contract via Bedford, Cityscape was hired to study the wireless master plan. This is so when 5G comes into our towns, all of our towns are really speaking with one type of voice. We're not dealing with a myriad of telecommunications companies trying to come in. So with that, Tony, I'm going to kick it over to you if you want to add anything about the telecommunications task force, and then you can introduce Cityscape.
So I just want to thank all the members. I see them on the screen, at least a good majority of them, helping us out. This This started as a task force to address, a very evasive issue. We didn't have communication services in town during the ESIS event. And it's evolved, it's one of its goals is, to cultivate reliable and sustainable service, right? Communication services. And, out of that, we are working with this task force right now, the northern communities to essentially build the foundation for a communications master plan for the northern communities. And I think this is a great starting point. It's been very exciting. Sue Raybold is the lead from Cityscape, and she's working through the plan. And this is the community involvement in this effort. And I hope the folks from the community and my task force will have our task force, I should say, will have an opportunity to ask questions.
Okay, so Susan, meeting is yours.
Thank you. Can I have permission to share my screen?
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. All right. There we go. All right. Thank you very much for having us tonight to talk about the Cooperative Wireless Telecommunications Infrastructure Master Plan. This is the first of a few meetings that we hope to have over the next couple of months to talk about this topic. I want to share with you briefly. Let's see if I can get there we go. My name is Susan Raybold. I'm the project manager for Cityscape. Also on the call with me this evening is Elizabeth Harrington Smith, and she is in charge of government relationships. We work closely together on all of our projects. Cityscape Consultants works only for local governments. We do not own towers. We do not build towers. We do not provide a wireless service to be purchased by subscribers. And our company includes a team of engineers, legal professionals, planning professionals, and contract administrators. We specialize in the laws that are in place to regulate wireless telecommunication infrastructure. We specialize on radio frequency propagation mapping and helping communities come up with plans to provide a robust network into the community. So our project that we have been hired to do has 7 steps. I'm going to walk through those 7 tasks with you, but this is an abbreviated outline. We start off with our preliminary research. Normally, we have a project initiation meeting like we're having right now before we do the infrastructure assessments. We actually have done the infrastructure assessments already because we had a window of opportunity this fall before winter set in. There was a lull in, I don't want to say a lull, there was a reduction in the COVID cases, and we were anticipating that number to go back up again as winter set in. So we came in and we did the assessments, and now we're doing the initiation meeting. We'll then follow through with the rest of the tasks, which will include the catalog, our mapping, regulatory review, and then the draft and final master plans for the deliverables. Task 1 is the preliminary research, and we collect all the data that we can about all the existing antenna locations throughout our study area. Our study area includes 7 communities. We have Yorktown and Summers, North Salem, Lewisboro, Pound Ridge, Bedford, and Mount Kisco. And so the project is really twofold. We're going to do a wireless master plan that looks at the region as a whole, and then each individual community that I just named will have their own individual master plan, sort of as a subset to the big project. So we collect data from each of the clients, each of the communities. We also look at the FCC registered site locations. We go to the tower owner databases that we have access to pull information. And then we go out and we actually visit each and every site that has wireless telecommunications antenna on them. We go, we visit the site, we look to see what the infrastructure looks like. We verify the location. We take lots of pictures. We want to know who's on that facility. Is there enough equipment, ground space for additional co-locations? Is the tower maximized or is the base station maximized? We record information about the site conditions. Does something appear to be broken? Does something need to be fixed? Does the site look secure? And we record all that and we put it into an inventory catalog, which is task 3. And each community will get an inventory catalog. It'll include a photo of your site, similar to this layout. You'll have a vicinity map so that you can get a quick idea of where this picture was taken. And then we'll provide the address. We'll provide all the information that we use in the master plan on that site into the catalog. Once the catalog and the initial mapping is finalized, that's when we start the engineering mapping analysis. This is an example of one of our communities in Massachusetts that we did a plan for. And these black dots represent where there are macro cells. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a few moments. The sort of pink dots represent where there are small wireless facilities. And the yellow represents in building. So if you're inside a structure within this yellow area, you should have a pretty good signal. Once you move out of the yellow and you start getting into these areas of green, those are in vehicle. The blue areas and purple areas are outdoor. And then where you have no coloration, those are dead zones. When we talk about doing a gap analysis, we are looking not at these yellow areas from a coverage perspective, but these areas where the yellow is not, because that's where we anticipate new infrastructure needing to go from a coverage perspective. And I should note that when this is a coverage map, we also do look at capacity, but this particular map is for coverage. Part of our analysis then is to look at the existing inventory. We do the gap analysis and we compare the gap analysis to the population density for the community. And we want to see where the largest centers of population are relative to where all the infrastructure is. So for this particular community, these dark areas of a deep red or brown are representing census blocks that have 10,000 or more people per square mile. This is super important because on this map, it looks like this area has great coverage, and it probably does. But when you add this number of population into that same geographic area, we know that there's not enough sites to accommodate what that subscriber base would be like from a capacity perspective. And so while it may appear yellow on this map, from a capacity perspective, we expect there to be more sites because there's no way those number of sites can accommodate 10,000 plus people per square mile. So we look at that. We look at traffic counts if they're available. We look at seasonal changes. We look at employment centers, if there are any schools, and higher learning institutions where you may have larger population centers throughout the year at different times. All those variables get played into our analysis for the master plan. Once we have identified those gaps, we then want to look at your regulations. How are your policies affecting the deployment? Are they affecting the deployment? Maybe they're not, maybe they are. We don't know until we look at that. We want to see the strengths and weaknesses of the ordinance. Are your ordinance policies consistent with the most recent federal guidelines and definitions that have been put in place? And by any chance, are the gaps there because there might be a barrier to entry through the zoning? One of the common barriers that we find is that gaps will show up in low density, medium density, single family residential zoning areas. And if the ordinance prohibits facilities in those zoning districts, then that is probably a barrier to entry because the industry can't get in there because the zoning doesn't allow it. So that's just one example. There are other examples, but I just use that one because it seems to be a real prevalent one that we run into. I'm not suggesting that's a problem in Somers, but it's something that we will look at. After we have looked at all of these aspects of our plan, we'll put it together and we'll present it to you for your considerations. We'll take public comment. We'll address public comment, and then we'll put it into a final document. So I want to transition now out of the tasks that we're going to be doing and more into the discussion of definitions for wireless telecommunications, because it's important that we all understand the terminology. So
Susan, can I ask one
Yeah.
question before we get to that? You
Sure.
said about regulations and zoning and so forth, and zoning can be a way to prohibit or allow a tower or something, some sort of infrastructure in that regard, in that capacity. It's my understanding that even if we were to zone these types of structures, this type of infrastructure, any way we want or would prefer, the state and the federal government can really just override us. Is that a correct assumption, or is there a more nuanced answer?
Well, they could, but they haven't yet. There continues to be deregulation from the federal side of the industry. As of right now, the state of New York has not adopted more lenient standards than the federal government, unlike the state of North Carolina, where I live, and the state of Florida, where Elizabeth lives. Those states have actually even come in and reduced regulation or the ability for local governments to regulate. But you do still have, you are still empowered to regulate certain aspects, and you are, I encourage you to maximize the use of that opportunity. And I will get more into that, I promise. So you may hear generation used: first generation, second generation, third, fourth, fifth generation. And basically what that means is the evolution of telecommunications. So first generation wireless basically was the very first handheld mobile phone that was accessible for purchase. And if you had one of those phones, it looks sort of like a small suitcase that you carried around. And all it did was provide voice phone calls. It worked in the low frequencies of 800 megahertz and operated a lot like a radio station. When your call got out of the service area, it got crackly and then it faded away. When the smaller handsets came out, that basically symbolized a transition to second and third generation. The handsets got smaller. The radio frequency that they operated on was higher in the 1800 megahertz range and started to include a sharper voice texting, and a little bit of data. It wasn't until fourth generation, with the advent of really the iPhone and the Galaxy platform that you started to have all these apps being added to the phone. And those apps require a tremendous amount of bandwidth to work. So what happened is between third and fourth generation, those first sets of towers and antennas that were installed for coverage, that coverage area started to shrink quickly because the more bandwidth that's used in that network, the smaller the service area becomes from those initial sites that were built. The only way to increase that coverage and increase that capacity in order to have a seamless coverage with fourth and future fifth generation is to have more infrastructure added. So the infrastructure is not going to go away. The towers and antennas and base stations aren't going to go away. You're going to continue to need more infrastructure as we move into 5G, 6G, and 7G. So the antenna that are needed to make those wireless devices work have to be mounted above the ambient tree height, above the terrain, and above buildings, because those variables cause blockage of the signal. So the antenna looks like what's on these towers, and these are non-concealed towers for macro cells. Macro cells are the much bigger antenna that you're accustomed to seeing on these sites. The non-concealed towers could be guide, like this one has the guide wires. You can't really see them that great, but they're there. Or freestanding self-support. It's a monopole and a lattice tower. These facilities can also be concealed or semi-concealed. This is an example of a faux tree. This is a concealed macro cell, as is this one, and they're painted. They can be painted any color. In these examples, the antenna that are on this tower are actually tightly configured against a pole, and then this fiberglass casing that's radio frequency tolerable or tolerant friendly is placed over those antennas so you don't see them. And all the coax cable is interior to the shaft that goes down to the ground equipment.
So Susan, one more question. On an apples to apples comparison, which tower is more expensive, the concealed or the unconcealed? And then which tower is more effective and powerful, concealed or unconcealed?
Okay, as regards to the cost, it is less expensive to build a non-concealed tower. And with regards to which one is more powerful, there are so many different types of designs. I would say this type of design where you can put 3, 6, and 9 antenna on this type of facility on a single array might be more powerful than one of these, but it's hard to say because here's the thing. On this tower, let's say hypothetically, this is Verizon. And I'm saying hypothetically, I'm not saying Verizon's right here. I'm just saying hypothetically, if this is Verizon, they're able to put their antenna here on the top, and it looks like they've got probably 9 or so antenna, maybe even 12 at the top. And those antenna are probably operating in the low frequency, mid-band frequency, and high frequency ranges. That's why there's different antenna. On this, what they're probably doing is they're probably putting their low frequency on one spot, their medium frequency, mid-range frequency antenna on another, and a higher frequency range yet on another port. So it's just configured differently. What you may run into is that these concealed sites may be less apt for multiple co-locations, whereas a non-concealed site may be able to accommodate more tenants on the tower. but I wouldn't necessarily say that one is more powerful than the other because it all depends on their antenna configuration and what their goals and objectives are in that particular service area. Are they trying to provide just coverage? Are they trying to provide coverage and increase capacity, or is it strictly a capacity site? There's so many variables, it's really hard to say.
So just for clarification, when you talk about co-location, you're talking about Verizon and AT&T and maybe, T-Mobile all operating on that one antenna or site, right? Right. As opposed to having each one have their own antenna.
That is correct. So each one of these arrays on this particular tower and on this one generally represents a different service provider. You have 4 service providers that we found when we did the assessment. You've got AT&T, Sprint, T-Mobile, and Verizon. And so if you had all 4 of them on one facility, they would all be co-locating. Now, it could be in an instance where, depending on the height and the type of concealed facility, you may have limited opportunity to put them all on the same, and you may have to have more. That is correct. Now, when the antenna mounts on something that is not a tower built for the sole purpose of holding that antenna, it's called a base station. This is a new federal definition that was introduced about 4 or 5 years ago. So this water tank has antenna on it. So it's a base station because the water tank wasn't built for those antenna. This rooftop has antenna on it, and so it wasn't necessarily built for that antenna. And an example of another base station is high-powered transmission lines where they put the antenna on those facilities. That's considered a base station. And just like with the towers, base stations can be concealed and semi-concealed and non-concealed. So the previous slide had non-concealed antenna. We'd consider this one semi-concealed because these antenna are painted to try and match part of the coloring on that wall of that building. Here's another example of what we would consider semi-concealed. The antenna is wrapped to match the facade of the brick, but they didn't hide the coax cable going into that antenna. So we would consider that semi-concealed. The steeple, on the other hand, we would consider completely concealed because you can't see any of the infrastructure. You do see the louvers here for ventilation, but you can't see any of the antenna. And here's another example of what we would also consider concealed. If you didn't know that behind these louvers was equipment for wireless communications, you probably wouldn't know that it was there. Now, those are examples of macro cells. You're going to start seeing small wireless facilities being deployed into some of your areas where you need more capacity. These sites have to meet the definition of a small wireless facility, which means they're 50 feet or less in height, and that the antenna does not exceed more than 3 cubic feet. So this is an example of a small wireless facility that's not concealed. You can see this is a smaller antenna. It's mounted on the top of this existing utility pole. You can see all of the wires. You see the equipment box that goes with it and the meters all on the pole. Conversely, this is an example of a concealed small wireless facility. The antenna is blended in with the structure. The equipment and the meters are in the base of this facility. And we also consider this a dual purpose small wireless facility because it's providing lighting, it's got these banner poles, and there's a lot of different types of concealed small wireless facilities. And this is just an example of one of them. What you want to try and avoid is having so many different small wireless facilities along the same stretch of roadway. The facility here can actually accommodate more than one service provider. And if you don't have development standards that encourage that type of deployment pattern, you will start seeing what we're observing in other parts of the country, especially in Florida, where each service provider just goes in and puts in their own pole. And it's not uncommon now to see multiple providers going along the same stretch of roadway, putting up facilities that don't match, look very different from one another. And this is actually in the neighborhood of Elizabeth. And these two small wireless facilities have been installed, and there's a third one getting ready to go right here for another service provider. So that's one of the things we'll be looking at when we look at your policies, is to see if that type of deployment pattern is being addressed. But then again, you may want that type of deployment pattern. So if you do, we'll help address that. But if you don't want that type of deployment pattern, we'll help you come up with some strategies.
So Susan, if I may interrupt you for a second, just to ask the question. Yeah,
Yeah.
that last one, I would not be in favor of poles all over the place, each one serving a different carrier. But I just want to ask a question here because it reminded me of something years ago. Just, I think Tom Garrity and I were the only ones on the town board. We were talking about the placement of a tower somewhere in town, whether it should be concealed like a tree or something else. And I don't know who was talking to us, but they said, well, this will become kind of a moot point in the issue in the future, because almost all of the not towers, but all the facilities will be on small poles like you have here with the light pole with the facility included within. Is that what the future is? And these tall towers are going to become the dinosaurs of the past? Or was that person mistaken in sort of predicting the future?
You're going to have you have the potential of lots of small wireless facilities, almost one every 450 to 900 feet in the future. But you will not be seeing the macro cells come down because they work together. And that happens to be my next slide.
So they work together, but they do have to be built in conjunction as a system, right? As you
That is
expand.
correct. That's correct. The network uses both types of infrastructure. So you have your your macro cells that were built to accommodate calls. They're still going to continue to be built for coverage and capacity. And then in the areas where you have densely populated areas or where you have significant traffic volumes, large work environments, large venues that people come to and population increases, you will see the use of these small wireless facilities. And there's two types of small wireless facilities. You have an outdoor DAS network, distributed antenna network, and that actually ties directly back to the base station of the macro cell antenna, whether it be on a tower or on the rooftop. Or they could actually be freestanding small wireless facilities. We've seen both of those types of deployment patterns on Long Island, where we've been doing quite a bit of work recently as well. So we see both outdoor DAS and we see both standalone small wireless facilities. So they are in New York, and I would anticipate you having both a continued deployment of macro cells and then the addition of small wireless facilities in the future.
So to Rich's point and to Bill's point, with these smaller facilities, I mean, we're going to want co-location. I mean, that's what we're suggesting, right? We don't want individual carriers coming in and building these things all over the place. You would like to consolidate. So you can seem to have co-location on the larger towers. Can you have co-location on the smaller towers? Are they?
Yes, you can.
They can, and they can handle like three or four providers.
Mm-hmm. They can.
Okay.
Yep.
So Susan,
Yes.
Susan, one other point. One of your slides, you had a telephone pole with one of these services on it. If nothing else, in our fair community and in northern Westchester, we have a plethora of telephone poles. So are these small wireless facilities lend themselves or being attached to those?
They do. And sometimes they'll attach to the actual pole. More common than not, we see that they want to remove the existing utility pole and install a new antenna or a new utility pole to accommodate the equipment that they want to put on there.
Okay,
And
well,
they
Art,
typically want to go taller. So it's not uncommon to see them remove like a 30, 35-foot utility pole and want to install a 45-foot utility pole in its place.
so what about the existing utilities that are on there, the electrical wires, the cable wires? I mean, they,
Right, they have to work with the utility company for the placement of their equipment on that infrastructure. Or if they take the pole down and put a new one up, they have to work with the utility company to put the equipment back on that they have in addition to what they're proposing with their small wireless.
okay, thank you. That answers my question.
Mhm.
So I'd like to interrupt this broadcast. My niece just had a baby.
Oh,
Congratulations.
Hey,
It's better news
Congratulations.
than all this COVID stuff, that's for sure.
Boy,
Way to
girl,
go.
name.
Wait.
No names yet. That's coming.
congratulations.
Awesome,
Tony, name her Tony.
Oh, yes, right, with an I.
that's awesome.
Yeah, that's
Congratulations.
right.
That's
Thank you,
great
thank you, thank you.
news.
That's fun, great. Rick, maybe we'll do your announcements instead of COVID announcements. You'll do baby announcements
you
next
go.
year.
Yeah.
Okay.
That'd be great.
All
Yeah,
right.
Patty, make a note of that.
Sorry, Susan. Go ahead.
No, that's great news. Our son and his wife are expecting in about a month. So I share your joy. That's awesome. So the next part that I want to focus on now is what we've done to date and look at the infrastructure that is in the town of Somers. So this is our overall map. You can see how the sites spread across the geographic area. We look at facilities just outside the study area as well, out to a mile, because the sites that are along your perimeter will continue to have an effect on your signal and your coverage and capacity into your actual zoning limits. And if we did not include these sites into the analysis, it could misrepresent the picture of our study.
So that site just north of us in Carmel, I mean, that's a
Right
new
there.
site.
Mhm.
It's under construction, right?
010, I think that one's actually there.
Okay.
If you know of a site under construction that is outside of our study area, please let me know.
All right, we'll take that up. I know there's something going on up there in one of the neighborhoods and they're going back and forth, but I think there may be another site up in that area.
That would be great to know. Thank you.
Okay.
So in the town of Somers, you have 9 sites, and then you have 9 outside in this 1 mile buffer. So these are the sites that we'll be looking at when we do your individual master plan. And of those sites, they are all macro cells. There are no small wireless facilities yet in this area. The infrastructure antenna type does include one public safety site, but we are not doing anything with public safety. You have one public safety site, and then you also have one with public safety and a macro cell. But we only include the public safety in the event that there might be room for co-location on that site. We're not doing a public safety analysis. Then we want to look and see where are these sites located. Of all the sites in our study area, most of them are on private property. You have 1 inside the right-of-way and 4 on publicly owned land. Those are identified with the green.
Mm-hmm.
And with regards to design, you have 5 that are concealed, 3 that are semi-concealed, and then 10 that are not concealed. So the sites in Somers that we went and visited are listed in these next few slides. So this is S1, and it is a concealed monopole. We call it actually a unipole. And then site 2 is a monopole. Site 3 is a monopole. Site 4 and 5 are concealed wireless facilities. These are macro cells. Site 6 is non-concealed. Site 7 and Site 8 are monopines. One is more concealed than another. And Site 9 is a base station because it's the rooftop that has these wireless antennas on top of it.
Were you able to ascertain whether there's UPS, uninterrupted power, at these locations, or?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
Well, in times of emergency, when power goes down, what's the backup power situation there?
Oh, you know, we could figure that out when we look at our images. When we take pictures, we typically, when we do the assessments, we started adding whether or not there's a generator on the site.
Yes.
And so we can add that to the catalog.
Yeah,
So most of the sites, they are backup batteries that are for the sites that last anywhere from 2 hours to 12 hours, depending on the site and what their backup power is. And then the generator will kick in. So sometimes you can go a full day. It's still online, even though the power's out, before a generator will kick in.
So that's a very good issue to bring up. That would be very helpful to know which of these facilities do have batteries and backup generators. During our last big outage, it was a nightmare. We had no internet service because either they had no generator, no backup, or they had a 4-hour battery, and that was all the backup they had.
And we also heard that in some instances, we couldn't even get access to those sites. So if there was something there might have been a condition where there was no fuel there, or it hadn't been tested, or the like.
Okay, we will make a note of that. Or I have made a note of that, actually.
Thank you.
And again, just going back to what we can and can't regulate, in your experience, Susan, is that something that we can regulate? You know, we want a minimum of X hours of backup, albeit battery or generator.
Now that's interesting. We haven't done we have not put something that specific in an ordinance before with regards to hours or amount of time for the generator, but we have put in language for development standards to include the generator. So I will have to ask Anthony, he's partner and an attorney that specializes in the telecommunications law. So I will ask him
specifically, can we adopt a town code that would require either the retrofitting or on future projects to require some form of backup, whether it be generator or these these cell batteries? That's been something that I sit on the planning board, and we would be able to discuss that with applicants that come forward to place new infrastructure throughout the town. And if we as a municipality had the ability to do that and not have to deal with some federal regulation that would prevent us from doing it, that information would be valuable for us looking for a plan in the future for sustainability of these systems during power outages and other incidents.
Sure, absolutely. Well, we will get on that when we talk to Anthony and let you know what we find out.
Thank you, Susan.
So moving into the wireless telecommunications regulatory parameters, I just wanted to talk a little bit about your enabling legislation that you have to regulate the industry comes from the Telecommunications Act of 1996. specifically Section 704, where it enables local government to regulate the industry, provided you do not unreasonably discriminate amongst providers of functionally equivalent services. What does that mean? Well, once you allow wireless infrastructure into the community, which you're required to because you can't zone them out, you have to allow all of them to come in. At one point, we used to see ordinances that had standards that said you couldn't have a facility within 3 miles of each other. So they had to be spaced. And those types of separations have a real tendency to be discriminatory, because a low frequency service provider, that signal can travel a much greater distance. The higher you go in the band spectrum the smaller geographic area that signal can serve. And as we get into 5G and they start using these really small antennas, they're in an ultra high frequency. And that signal does not propagate very far at all, which is why they have to be spaced so closely together. So spacing is an item that we look to make sure is not creating a problem with this particular regulation.
But you bring up an interesting point, though. If a 20-year-old tower was originally approved to have a certain footprint,
Mhm.
as we move into time and technology moves from 4, 5G, it's going to collapse the footprint, right?
It
It will,
It potentially could, depending if it's in an area where there's a lot of subscribers, then that footprint from that service from that tower would definitely shrink. Yes. So you may have to have another facility, like, close to that one, whereas before you may not have needed it. And
Okay.
you can't have the effect of, you can't prohibit or have the effect of prohibiting the personal wireless service, which I've mentioned already. You have to act on request within a reasonable period of time. Any denial has to be in writing and with substantial evidence. And you cannot regulate the environmental effects relative to radio frequency emissions
mhm.
beyond what the FCC says is allowed. So, for example, you can require a statement that the facility complies with the commission's regulations concerning RF, but you cannot deny a request or concerns about that radio frequency.
Okay.
And on that note, Susan,
Yes.
there's, I don't know which is fact and which is fiction, but, some people are concerned very much about the radio frequency and living near it and citing potential health hazards, short-term, medium-term, and long-term. What can we tell those people who have that concern?
So there is not a lot you can do from a regulatory perspective, because the FCC is very adamant that their studies show that these sites emit non-ionizing radiation, so they don't change the molecular cell structure, not like a X-ray, and that the power outage or that's output, thank you, from the antenna has to be maintained within certain levels that the industry has to follow. And they've deemed that to be a moot point. Now, there is a challenge going on right now. Citizens and governments have petitioned to have these regulations looked at again. But until there has been a decision made on that, then it's off limits, really, in terms of regulatory control. So I know that there's concerns. I hear them but there's just nothing we can do about it except to encourage people to reach out to the FCC and get on the bandwagon with those who are writing letters and put their evidence out that states that, what their concerns are, and to push to have the regulations reviewed and restudied.
So Susan, in that same vein, I think the lawsuits are really revolving around now 5G, aren't they? People are concerned about the health effects.
I think it's all of it. I think it's all of it. I'm not, I'll have to ask, and that's another thing I'll have to ask Anthony about, but I don't think it's limited to just 5G.
No,
Just so
not
the
that
No, I think
5G, but 5G is included, I believe.
Oh, it is included.
it is.
Yes.
Oh yeah, and 5G has really sparked the fight with the federal government because of the amount of infrastructure that's going to be needed
Right.
with the small wireless facilities and the output of the 5G. That is the issue. So we'll see where it all lands.
So is that, so from the public's understanding that as we move to that technology, that's just going to require more deployment of stations, albeit smaller ones, larger ones and the like, right?
Correct.
More, and more exposure. If
And
they're-
more exposure.
They have to be more of them closer together. And yeah, I've fielded a number of concerns from the public about 5G, even though it's really not here in any real form yet. So we'll be following that legislative back.
Yes, as we are as well.
Right.
Sure.
Okay.
So one of the deregulations from the Telecom Act of 96 was in 2012 with the Middle Class Tax Relief and Job Creation Act. Section 6409 went after the local governments who were not responding to co-locations on existing infrastructure in a timely manner. And so this particular piece of legislation requires local governments to approve co-locations on eligible facilities without going back through a public hearing process, and to do it within a certain amount of time. And so, as we discussed, co-location is when you mount equipment, existing or additional equipment on an existing facility. An eligible facility means that you've approved that tower or base station through either your building permit process or through public hearing process, but they went through the proper channels to get an approval. So if they have done that and they want to expand that site, provided they don't exceed the definition of a substantial change, you have to allow them to co-locate on that facility. And that co-location can increase the height of that facility as well. So for example, they're allowed to increase an existing tower by 20 feet or 10%, whichever is greater, if it's on private property. And if it's a base station or if it's in the right of way, it's 10% or 10 feet, whichever is greater. Now there's 7 criteria that they have to meet in order to be able to do that. And that's just one example. But keep that in mind as you go forward and looking at your existing sites, and as you approve new sites, that those sites can be increased, and you have to allow it, provided they don't exceed the definition of substantial change. More recently, the FCC's third report and order, which was adopted to accelerate wireless broadband, I can't speak, wireless broadband deployment, went to the heart of timelines for approvals, commonly referred to as a shot clock. So, for example, when a small wireless facility does come in, you have 10 days to do an initial review and to determine whether or not that application is complete or incomplete. And if it is incomplete, you have to notify them and you have to identify why it's incomplete. And then the time clock stops. And then the applicant will, revise it if it's incomplete. And when they resubmit, the 10 days starts all over again until you get to the point where the application is deemed complete. Now, if it's a macro cell facility, it's 30 days. You have 30 days to review the application. And if and when you find that it's incomplete, then the shot clock stops, but it tolls. So when they come back and resubmit materials that were missing, you pick up on that shot clock where you left off. It doesn't restart. The small wireless facilities, the shot clock restarts every time they submit. With the macro cell for a new site, it tolls. Now, your application review timeline, once it's determined that the site is complete, you have 60 days to approve or deny the small wireless facility when it's co-locating on an existing structure. And you have 90 days for a macro cell on a co-location. For a new small wireless facility, you have 90 days. And for a new macro cell, it's 150 days. So these are timelines that we also want to look at and make sure are in your ordinance so that they're consistent with federal regulations.
So in order to comply with that particular federal regulation, specifically the 10 days to review initial small wireless facility applications, a lot of our boards meet once a month. So do you have any suggestions or recommendations for us as how to meet that 10-day requirement, or has it just not come up yet?
Well, the 10 days needs to be an administrative review, and it's to determine whether or not the application is complete. So we recommend that you have a good checklist in place so that when the application comes in, you can check it against all the parts and pieces that you require in your code, because you do have to respond quickly.
Thank you.
And if you go beyond that time, or looks like you're going to need more time, we recommend that you put in place an agreement between the applicant and yourselves, the town, to extend that timeline and get it in writing.
So if we have a process in place where an initial application is reviewed by our buildings department or our town engineering department, then that would satisfy that, as long as that initial review is completed in 10 days. And then they could be forwarded now for within 30 or 60 days for a town board now to review plans, because that's sort of the system that we have now. And it sounds like we could be compliant if I am reading this correctly.
It's an
Yes, that would
administrative
work.
review.
That would work.
Right. Okay.
So our next steps are to make sure that the inventory that we have put on these maps is in place and it's correct. And you're going to look at potential new sites in the northern boundary, which will be very helpful. And once we have that, we'll start on the inventory catalog and the propagation mapping. And I would just like to add, I can stop screen sharing. I do want to add that Elizabeth and I are actually going to be up there next week. So, Mr. Sirico, if by chance you happen to get that information to us by Tuesday morning,
I'm under pressure.
actually go out there and look at it on Tuesday afternoon.
Okay.
So Anthony, I think are you talking about the one on Keora Boulevard or Drive?
I have to get the exact, it's up in Carmel,
Yeah,
by
the
6.
neighborhood is fighting a proposed
Yes.
facility. So it's really nothing to look at, Susan, at this point, but and they
What
are
is the name of the community?
Mayapack, is it? Or is it
Yeah,
Carmel?
Mayapack.
It's
Mhm.
Town of Carmel, Mayapack. It's right over the border,
Okay,
Route 6.
okay.
Well, we can look it up then. If there's been a public hearing, we can look up and see, get the
Yeah.
address and the coordinates, and we can at least put it on there as a proposed and under review site so that it's
Right.
on our radar.
No, because it's definitely within half a mile of the Somers border.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Great.
I mean, just as a convention, what would be the coverage? I mean, obviously terrain and all that matters, but a large station typically goes from what to what in coverage?
Well, 2 to 4 miles,
2
but
to 4
your
miles, okay.
terrain and your topography and your vegetation and your climate all play into that.
Okay,
So that's a rule of thumb. And then that's just the coverage. Now, that coverage area could shrink considerably if you have a tremendous number of subscribers. It could, well, it could go down to less than a mile.
okay.
Hmm. Okay.
So coverage and capacity sort of has an inverse function.
Yep.
Okay. Well,
Right.
great.
So Susan, let me just ask you I know ultimately you're going to be presenting the municipalities back with like a model master plan
Right.
to
Well,
review and adopt, or?
Well, what we're going to do is we'll take these maps or these sites and we will simulate the same antenna and propagation modeling that the industry uses
Mhm.
to create our maps and identify the gaps. And then we'll bring that back to you and have you, look at that, ask some questions, and then help you troubleshoot. How are you going to fill in those gaps? What are some, how do you want to fill those gaps in? And it becomes a proactive tool for you to micromanage the future of how sites are deployed versus being reactive when an application comes in and trying to decide whether or not, you want it to look like a tree or a unipole, or it could be unconcealed, because you'll already be waiting for that site to come in.
Mm-hmm.
And you
Okay.
have used public property, I noticed. So are you interested in using, you don't have to let me know now, but does the community want to continue to use public property? There's a lot of advantages to using public property because you can control that site, you can control the maintenance, you can control how it looks. And if you're interested in using public property, you can go ahead and pre-design it. You can put that in your ordinance even. You can say, we vetted this site, it's gone through a public hearing process when the ordinance was done. And if the industry comes in and they put in let's hypothetically say they put in a flagpole at City Hall or Town Hall, and you would vet that, say 120 feet. Again, this is hypothetical. Then if the industry came in and they said, oh, we want to go in this area and we're willing to build a 120-foot flagpole, and you vetted that through the ordinance hearing process, then you could do that administratively. If they came in and said, oh, well, we really want a 180-foot facility, then you'd have to take it back and go through the review all over again because it doesn't match what was vetted the first time. But what that does is it creates a speed to market for the industry, which is what they're most interested in. And if you can create a speed to market for them, they're more inclined to follow the ordinance with regards to aesthetics and placement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I think my question was at the end of the process, when you show us what our gaps are, what we could project will be companies coming to us and saying, hey, here's where we want to fill in. Will we have at the end of your process, a model ordinance that we can adopt?
Yes, we could.
Yeah.
We're going to identify strengths and weaknesses. We've already been asked if we have a model ordinance, but it's if you want it to be specific to your community, that specificity is not specificity. I can't get it out. Anyway, That,
Specificity. Yeah.
thank
Specificity.
you. That
that's-
level of ordinance writing is not included in the contract. That would
Gotcha.
have to be an add-on. But generic wording, that we can provide.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Awesome.
And thank you
So-
for the presentation.
Anybody
So
else
the
have
advantage
questions?
of being with Cityscape, just so I get it, is that we're in effect being proactive here before 5G becomes prevalent throughout the area, throughout the United States, so that our regulations, our placement of towers is systematic rather than sporadic. Since you don't have a lot of time once the proposals come in, we'll be ahead of the game. Is that basically the goal of what we're doing here, in case people in Somers going, so what did you guys talk about? The goal is to get ahead of this with people who know more, obviously, than we do as town board members. Do I have that about right, in case someone asks me that question?
Yes.
Okay.
And
Succinct.
two things I just saw, Susan. First of all, thanks to you and your team. I thought this was well organized and very informative, so I appreciate that.
Very.
And I saw Adam Smith had his hand up. Did the question get answered, Adam, or do you still?
Well,
have
I
the
just
question
want to point out,
incorporated?
we have a great location in the north part of Somers to install some cells on an existing facility.
Mhm.
Storage tank on Ross Drive.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you're looking for something up north, that's where you should go.
Yeah, I'm sure that'll be studied and added to the inventory. But that's an existing facility. It's a base station.
Is it not in the inventory that we provided?
Well, no, there's no cell there yet.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Okay,
But,
good.
yeah, it's a good site for one.
Mhm.
Joseph.
That'd be up near that same border with Mayapack. Or actually the town of Carmel. Mayapack's part of the town of Carmel.
Yes.
That's interesting. Huh.
Joseph Pezzamenti has raising his hand.
Susan, thank you very much for the detailed presentation. I just had some questions with regard to any tower, whether it's, small cell or microcell or macro cell, would require fiber optic infrastructure in order to fill in a dark spot on the map. Is that a correct statement?
Well, that's a good question. They do not always
Yes and no.
have fiber to all the sites. They would love to have fiber to the sites. Ideally, fiber is what gives the site more capacity. So, and it's an optimal, it optimizes the network, it makes it more robust. But no, not every site has fiber to it.
Okay, it's just, being where we are today, with lots of people working from home. I understand you're analyzing population density, but I'm not sure that there's a way to analyze bandwidth usage compared to a year ago, compared to today, with a lot more people working from home, a lot more children learning from home. I think the fiber piece, the analysis of that and where the existing fiber infrastructure is and where those strengths are, as we look to the future to add more. I mean, it's great to encourage development in terms of aesthetics, in terms of zoning, but population density isn't the entire story. If you have, if you have 6 people in a household, 3 learning, 2 working, and it's not in a population dense area, but it is in an area that requires more bandwidth. So I think understanding where the fiber is important. My understanding is that each macro or micro cell is adding devices to a network that may or may not have adequate fiber infrastructure. So I'm sure that's part of the provider's analysis, but I'm not sure that would be part of our understanding after the report. Let me see. I think I touched on, I was just taking some notes, and I noticed that there's no small sites, but that could be that could also go back to the telecoms. The telecoms really, I mean, my understanding is they're looking for a 3 to 5 year payoff for any infrastructure investment. So we can pass ordinances, but if we don't have the density to back it up, I fear we're stuck. So, I mean, what are your thoughts on that versus, I know in other parts of the country, there's been a trend of open access networks that can be bonded by municipality with a 30-year payoff, and it actually ends up earning revenue after that period of time. So I'm just curious to know your thoughts on that, just knowing that we're a low density area. And I think through the ordinances, we'll be able to, or the town will be able to encourage aesthetics, but I'm not sure that we can prompt infrastructure investment with lack of density in light of the fact that the telecoms are looking for a 3 to 5 year horizon for return of value to shareholders.
You bring up some very good points for sure. So you're right. The industry is about their bottom line. And if you have a very rural area, they're not inclined to go there because the subscriber base doesn't support that business model. But I don't know that that's the case with Somers. It'll be interesting to look at that. We'll certainly be looking at it when we're out there. We've seen other parts of New York where, you know, small wireless facility, ODAS networks are going out into these areas. So it's being driven by something more than population. It's being driven by subscriber usage. And so I think if their network shows that they have areas where they have a loss of capacity, and it's documented, especially by people who call and complain, they'll look at that. But Elizabeth, you were going to say something about the fiber.
Right. So fiber to the cell tower sites is what's considered backhaul. And so either the cell sites, each facility has to have some sort of backhaul which communicates back to the network. So it's either via fiber optic, or it's sometimes in a case of a rural area where there's no fiber to the tower, it's a microwave backhaul. So the fiber that you may be speaking to needing to be in home would not necessarily come from that wireless facility. So the wireless services, so what happens is fiber networks get built out, and then there's the last mile, what's considered the last mile, which is from the cell site to your home. And that's what they call the last mile. Those are what they're trying to do. Is wireless is an easier way to get those devices to work. It's a less expensive way to get those devices to work than fiber to each home, especially in a rural area. So there's a couple different aspects of that, and that will be explained in the plan. And I think as we go forward, you'll see that fiber is definitely, like in my household, there's 3 of us and we have 12 devices. So, you know, and we could have all of them going at various times. So fiber to our home is important because then we can connect that way versus relying on a cell tower for services.
Right. Well, Susan,
does that make sense? Did that?
Yeah, no, it doesn't. Speaking of fiber, what you're going to learn when you study Somers a little closer is Fios via Verizon has crept into certain areas of our town, but not all. So there is an outcry. Why isn't Verizon? Why is the town prohibiting Verizon from expanding into Somers? And I routinely get in touch with Verizon and they give me the same response. And the response is, we are building out the 5 boroughs of Manhattan at this time, and it is not economically feasible to expand in Somers. So that's what we've been getting for the last 5 years.
And it's all a business decision. It's based on, and they have their plans, and they will, they're going to hit the ones that make the most financial sense first. But we have seen some interesting movement, I guess, for some smaller communities, because the squeaky wheel gets the grease. So if you start having a lot of people, like from your fire department, your police department, all of your citizens are starting to make some noise, Verizon may listen to it, if that's something that is of service to your community. And I think we will probably discover what that might be once we start digging into this a little bit further.
Okay, so since this is a public meeting, I think that's an excellent suggestion. Make noise, but it's not the supervisor's office you want to make noise. It's Verizon. So look on your bill.
That's right.
Use the contact.
Oh, right.
And join my
Verizon.
voice.
I'm sorry.
because They hear from me all the time.
That's
So
right. That's
I wanna
right. So
thank you for a very succinct and professional presentation. And we look forward to working with Cityscape. So thank you.
Very much.
thank you.
Thank you.
And drop us a note when you're going to be up here next week.
Okay, we'll
All
let
right.
you know. Thank you.
Good. Thank
Okay,
you.
so Adam, I know you're still with us and you're very patient. And we have a memo and a request from Adam dated February 10th regarding water district consolidation. So Adam, why don't you give us a synopsis of your request?
So in 2000 and 2001, we started a transmission main project that brought water from Route 35 and Mayapack Avenue into the Shenorock and Route 6 area of Somers. We borrowed money from the state revolving loan fund, and that's going to expire in 2022.
I mean, it's mature.
Mature.
Yes. Yes.
And in the interim, we also just recently completed a water main on Route 6 from the Whispering Pine area, Windsor Road, up to Mayapack. So that gives us two interconnections with Yorktown. And now the two systems or three systems, Windsor Farms, Amwalk Shenorock, and Amwalk Heights, are now basically interconnected. We can get water from we take water every day from both locations. So we basically are one system right now. But the health department treats us as three separate entities, which requires us to test every day. We're spending 3-4 hours a day collecting tests at each facility. It makes very little sense what we're doing. We're doing lead and coppers in each district every year. If we consolidate these districts, a lot of the operational expenses will go down. Our time management will be able to get other things done throughout the district. Financially, the finance office, the receiver of taxes, the assessor, they're all impacted by these three different districts.
Mhm.
Vouchers are all different. Checking accounts are all different. There's no, excuse me, there's no reason that we shouldn't look at consolidating these three systems into one system.
So just so, in essence, you have three legal entities that are billing and operating separately. And you're saying operationally, it's really one. So your proposal
Operationally is one.
is one. So your proposal is to create one legal entity, right?
Correct.
And then that'll simplify it. You know, need one bank account, one invoice, one set of billing and reconciliation. So you reduce three to, the work from 3 times to one.
Right. And there's inequities as well. I mean, Shenorock's the larger district. They're supporting the other districts as well, but and we try to divvy up those expenses, payroll and large expenses, but there's things that are just impossible to track and fairly distribute amongst the 3 systems.
Yeah,
Right,
there's
so
no
at-
perfect allocation method.
So this is possible now because of that completion of that loop.
Goes to the completion on the loop, and that will be debt-free.
Yes, okay. And
Adam, all districts will be debt-free?
Yes.
Great.
yeah,
Which entity will survive?
Well, the largest one right now is the Amawalk Shenorock Water District.
So that'll be the surviving district.
Or we could just change it to Somers Consolidated Water District number 1.
Yep,
Well, you would change the name, but the entity may just say the same, right?
right.
Now,
There is a process for this under general municipal law. It is a process. I just went through it in North Castle with 2 water districts. It takes the better part of a year to go through the process. There's a number of publications and public hearings and filings in Albany. So this would be effective. You would want it effective next January 1st?
April.
April of 2022.
Correct.
Okay,
is that a reasonable timeline?
yes.
Because that was going to be my next question. What is the, timeline for this?
Right. There's
Right,
gonna have to
so-
be maps
And
drawn
what
up.
would we have to budget to do
Downs.
this? What would we have to budget to do this, dollar-wise? Is going to be legal, filing, any operation, back office changes, what? We just do it?
I'm not completely sure on that. I know you're gonna have to have some engineering done, drawing of maps, the meets and bounds of the district will have to be determined.
No, don't, we really don't have to do that because you have all that information.
Okay.
The consolidation, that's why I asked which district will survive, because they'll just be consolidated into one district, but you'll have all the meets and bounds that you had. They don't change. They're
Okay.
just going to be one district. You've got all the tax lot designations for
Yeah.
billing, so you don't need to go through that again. Those are just computer functions to put that into one program.
Okay.
So Roland, you haven't been through this process elsewhere. Can you give us a ballpark? If we don't need the engineering because it's basically done. Well, I think
I'd have to pull our bills, but I think it was somewhere around $12,000.
Okay.
I mean, look, I think I would highly recommend this. The fact that, Adam's been working in our water district, and in fact, one of his projects over the last 10 years has been to complete Adam's Loop. And I'm sure at some point we're going to see a plaque up there on one of these pipelines.
That's what you should call the new district.
Adam's Loop.
Adam's Loop.
Name a road after me or something.
There you go. But no, it'd be commended on your dogged attention to getting that done.
Yeah.
And, so I guess basically we'll put this on a consensus agenda, Patty, we'll vote on it next week. I mean, unless
What are we voting on?
move forward on the water consolidation.
Just to authorize the commencement of work.
Thank
Is there public hearings or anything that are required?
Yes, there will be public hearings required, but there are time delays. The I think there's 6 weeks of publication, and it has to occur over a period of time. And you can't have the public hearing until like 30 days after that. You'd be amazed at how much time goes by to get this done.
And
But
we'll do-
Adam, there's no downside to this, right? It seems all upside. I don't see anything that's negative about this. Makes things more efficient, and each one protects the other. Each of the three sort of separate entities protects the other. So am I wrong here?
Yeah, all the rates right now are all the same in all the
All right,
districts.
well, that's important. So there's not going to be any.
No one's going to be
leveling.
paying any more
Yeah, okay,
than they
good,
are now.
good.
Well, and matter of fact, they should be paying a little less since it's paid off, right?
Oh, well, the
That'll
bond
drop everybody.
loan, but the water rate itself,
Right.
the quarterly charges shouldn't change.
Adam, would you send me a copy of your memo?
Sure.
Great.
I do have one question, Roland. We have 12 homes that are serviced as out of district. We would like to bring those 12 homes into the consolidated district. Is that possible?
Yeah, I would think that would be a separate proceeding once the consolidation is complete.
Okay.
So we could get that done relatively quickly, but it would have to be after the effective date of the consolidation.
Okay.
So on that note though, Adam, is Adams Loop mutually exclusive to Somers, even with these 12 outliers that want to join? In other words,
Yeah,
is there
they're all in
anybody in?
Somers. They're all in Somers.
Okay, and the flip side to that, is there anybody in Somers who's on another district other than yours?
There are several houses on Quaker Church Road that are serviced by Yorktown from
And
the
Hilltop,
Yorktown water.
and Hilltop also,
What's that?
and Hilltop Drive also.
Yeah, they're serviced by Yorktown, right?
Yep.
So they're out of district. We can't bring those in because
Cost
we
prohibitive.
have no infrastructure there.
Yeah.
It's not
think
necessary, really.
I think 4 houses away from me has Yorktown Water.
Yeah. But it's
Right.
not, it's not
Adam, that-
necessary, right? It's just they.
What's that, Rick?
No, I was going to say, Adam, that begs the question on our agenda item number 6, which is the mutual aid agreement between Northern Westchester Joint Water Works. We're in the process, we're an ancillary to this agreement in the fact that there's a 24 and a 16-inch main that runs to the MWalk water treatment plant that these 12 homes are on, and that they pay Yorktown. We're in the process, and this is a process where Somers is not directly involved, but Northern Westchester Joint Water Works is taking on the responsibility of those pipes now, and Yorktown will no longer be billing our people for that water. That billing will be coming through Adam's office. So
Okay.
it's kind of germane to this agreement because all of the joint waterworks now will, and this is an outgrowth of a water main break 2 years ago on Christmas Eve, where the 16-inch water main broke right by 35. It was in Somers, but Yorktown owned it, so they had to respond to it. I mean, Adam and his crew was there to help,
Yeah.
which we do. That's mutual aid. But they were very upset that they had to pay for it, that they had to pay for the paving. And this is the outgrowth of that, saying, look, anywhere else, we give mutual aid when it's owned by the Northern Westchester Joint Water Works. So, I mean, basically, we're covering number 6 right now. So that's what that agreement is.
That's
We're
fine.
adding on to that those 2 pipes that Yorktown is now selling to or giving to the Joint Water Works for responsibility. So, yeah, I I concur. I think consolidation is the way to go. And as you pointed out, Roland, it's a long process, but I think it's needed. And so we'll put it on for a consensus agenda next week unless any of the board members wants further discussion on it. Okay, if not, we'll put it on the consensus agenda. We'll get that approved. We'll get the memo over to Roland, and we can begin the process. Okay, the next agenda item is authorize supervisor to accept town tax warrant for 2021. I'll put that on the consensus agenda.
Did you skip 4?
Did I skip 4? Yes, I did. Not purposefully. So this is a proposal for a study of the Cablevision franchise with Altice/Cablevision. We did this a number of years ago.
Yeah, I remember.
Where they studied it, and I think, cost us like $6,000, and we got a $66,000 adjustment. So this is almost a no-brainer for us. I think we're doing this in conjunction with a number of other municipalities. And Harrison is kind of leading this up. So I'll put this on the consensus agenda for next week. We'll sign on with those other municipalities. They'll do a study for us, and then, they'll go back to us with what kind of a recovery we're going to get from Cablevision. Believe me, I can't wait to get some money back from Altice Cablevision. They've been quite the headache over this past year.
Here.
Okay, so that's,
They have a customer service department in the Elephant Hotel.
yeah, they do. They do. And we're going to start charging by the hour, and then see how things go. Okay, so I basically touched on and went over number 6. This is a mutual aid agreement that if a water main break happens, that mutual aid of all these communities, Cortland, Yorktown, Somers, water departments go and help out. And Adam, if you want to.
Well,
Extrapolate on
it
that.
also includes, there's certain water mains in Cortland that are owned
Yep.
by Northern Westchester as well. So if they need any resources from us, we can help out.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just the 16 on Route 35.
No, I know, right. Could be anywhere that the Northern Westchester Joint Waterworks owns the infrastructure.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, I'll move that to consensus if there's no objection already for the comment on that. Authorize the solicitation, number 7, of a request for proposals for the replacement of the generator and associated components with the installation at Heritage Hills Activity Center for a memo dated February 25th from Tom Tuma Jr., Building Inspector. So, as you know, the generator at Heritage Hills, which services the Activity Center Emergency Shelter, and that's why the town's involved over there. We purchased, we set it up, and that generator has been failing, and that in a disaster. And unfortunately, a number of years ago, we spent 8 days without power, and that generator was integral in keeping our shelter up and operating. So we're making a commitment once again, to replace and establish that generator. The difference this time around is it's going to be propane as opposed to diesel. There'll probably be one in-ground tank. Once again, the town will pay for, but this is an investment in our emergency operations program. And Tom Tuma and I believe Bill, you were on that conference call
Yes, as was Steve Wolfel.
Yeah, okay. So you guys talked about the specifications and so Tom
Yeah.
is asking authorization to go out to bid for that unit.
Yeah, and I, to your points, it makes perfect sense, and we should do this, and it's in sore need of an upgrade. The only thing that I'd be curious to follow up on is when the RFP is generated, it probably should have some options to it. And to your point, what was requested was a propane tank instead of diesel. Makes sense from a safety perspective. Who pays for it? Well, if it's a broken out item on the RFP, we can talk about that later. Is it going to be above ground or below ground? Is it going to be 1 tank or 2 tank? Each tank lasts 8 days. 8 days is the worst we've ever had. Do we want to risk it and, cap it at that? Or do we want to be more sure and get 2 tanks? All those things need to be discussed and decided. But I just would ask that the RFP gives us that flexibility.
Yeah. I heard in the discussion about 2 tanks, but I believe they're in the neighborhood of between $12,000 and $20,000. I think during an 8-day period, we could refill a propane tank rather than having another expenditure like that.
I would certainly hope, but
It would be my recommendation that we purchase 1 tank. But the way, a bid package goes out, you have to tell them what you want. We could say, what if we bought 2, what the price is? I think that's maybe what you're saying.
Yeah.
But we can review that final bid package before it goes out.
Thank you.
Okay, that'll be on once again for the consensus next week. Okay, under financial, authorize the 2020 budget transfers and modifications per an email from Bob Kehoe, Director of Finance. So this is an annual event. And if you've had an opportunity to review it, yes, the transfers total $605,171. And all the services, all right, that's on page, I don't know if that's the total for all of it. But if you haven't, I will put this on the consensus agenda. I don't, Patty, do you know if we need to move on this tonight?
Consensus agenda is fine.
Okay. And this way, gentlemen, if you haven't had or if you have questions on the transfers, you can direct them to the finance director. Okay. Yeah, because this just came into us, so you may not have had a chance to review it. But all the departments.
I don't see it in Dropbox.
Yep. Okay. So
You haven't seen it, Rich?
Yeah,
I don't see it. I'm
I've
looking
seen
now
it.
in Dropbox. I don't find it. Is it
If you
there?
go to the Somers, New York, and you pull up our agenda, it's listed in the documents there towards the bottom.
It's probably about page, it's towards the bottom, right?
But it's not in Dropbox yet.
I don't know. I didn't look at the Dropbox.
I mean, it was emailed to us. I saw it, briefly in email. I mean, page
It's a
118.
small
I think.
spreadsheet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not a real.
I mean, we'll take a look.
No,
It's
it's every
standard
year.
practice.
Do
Yeah.
this.
Essentially, they're realigning, from overages to underage, to cover, just level out the.
And he
budget.
streamlined that. And, we've had those special meetings at the end of December to close those books, so to speak.
Right.
And, in the past, it was sometimes you'd be doing this in April even. So maybe even later. So, I mean, he streamlined it. Yeah, it's not a problem. I was just looking for the numbers.
Yeah, so we'll put you'll have a week,
Yeah, no problem.
Consensus for next week. Okay. All right, now we'll move on to G, personnel, current vacancies, affordable housing, assessment, Board of Review, Partners in Prevention. Upcoming vacancies, Architectural Review, Parks and Rec. I just sent out letters to incumbents in those positions. Most likely, and we hope that the people who are expiring, their terms are expiring, want to re-up. So once again, we encourage, people to come on out and get involved in your community. There's plenty of places to volunteer. I want to acknowledge the resignation of Ms. Anna Maria Gizzo as a senior office manager in the town of Somers Building Department effective February 23rd. Acknowledge the promotion of Charles Huber III from road maintainer to motor operator at an hourly pay of $35.31 per memo dated February 24th from Nick DeVito, Superintendent of Highways. And that's effective February 22nd. Acknowledge the promotion of Dennis Coffey from road maintainer to skilled road maintainer at an hourly rate of $28.08 per memo from dated February 24th from Nick DeVito, Superintendent of Highways. That's effective February 22nd. Authorize the promotion of Miss Erica Gentile from part-time chauffeur to part-time food service helper at the same hourly rate of $17.45, effective July 1, 2019. She's been doing that role since that time, as well as being a chauffeur. Authorize the hours change of Miss Erica Gentile from part-time food service helper full-time to full-time food service helper, grade 2, step 10, at an annual salary of $47,000 on the CSEA salary schedule effective March.
I didn't get it, I sent it.
1st. So
This one, Rick, this was necessitated because of the, I believe it was last month we accepted the retirement or the resignation of one of the workers there. And I think she's filling in from that. Do I have that correct?
you do have that correct. And if you want really all the details of this transaction, Kim DeLucia has been working with County HR to make these changes.
Oh, is that right?
This is a valuable employee, has been going out of her way to get the work done. And this is on Barbara Tabor's recommendation. So she will be a full-time person in this role, and effective March 1st, her salary will be reflective of the work that she's doing. And then finally, authorize the provisional promotion of Ann Garrity to Office Assistant Automated Systems in the town's clerk office, grade 4, step 1, at an annual salary of $43,786 per memo dated February 24th from my office, which will be effective March 1st.
Is that also a person who's left? Is that a fill-in on that? Or is this an additional position? Just wondering.
Okay, so we had a retiree in our dog control officer. And that position, the part-time position, has not necessarily been filled yet. Part of that position is going over to the police where it originated. And the part that remains in the clerk's office will be all the other parts of the dog licensing, and complaints will be, I guess, come into the office and then be referred to the police. Patty, you could probably explain that better than I.
You pretty much covered that part, but don't forget, we have check-in until God knows when.
Yeah, I keep forgetting about the ancillary duties that she performs. But yeah, so that's it's a combination, Rich. People leaving and additional duties being assigned.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if is it increase in staff, or it's filling in a gap, or I'm just I got the memo. I just didn't figure it out from the memo.
Okay, so it's not increased.
Yeah,
She's
okay.
currently there. She is filling in lots of gaps.
Right. Okay. So all of those, Patty, will put over to the consensus agenda. Okay, which brings us to planning and engineering for review and comment is a wetlands application for 32 Mohawk Lane. I did not see anything in here that this is really a swimming pool site plan. I've been seeing a lot of pools going in. This is one of many.
Yeah.
So it's a proposed in-ground pool, 15 by 30, and concrete paver patio to be installed behind the residence. An existing septic tank will be relocated in the process. Okay, so no comment from my perspective.
I looked at them. I'm the same.
Okay. Is that consensus as well, Patty? Or do we, no, we have, yeah, or generate a comment?
I'm sorry, no, I'm just gonna send a memo, no comment.
Okay, got it. Okay, brings us to our proposed consensus agenda. 1 through 5.
I need to interrupt.
Yes?
Number 1 needs to be moved tonight.
Okay. Okay, yes, the performance bonds. And let me just see if this was the. Yes, Tamara can find. Yep, okay. All right, I'm going to make a motion to accept the following subdivision performance bond. Number 1 and number 2. Let's see. Number 1 and 2, Pat, or just number 1? 1 and 2?
Yes, both.
Okay. I'll make a motion to move the returning the bonds per memos from Wendy and Steve Wolfel.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, so moved. Okay, and then 3, 4, and 5 we'll put on the consensus for next week, unless there's any questions about that. We're scheduling, well, how much notice do you need, Patty, for the scheduling of the public hearing? That can be done at the consensus agenda next week? Okay. So I want to, thank Anthony for working with me and the Heritage Hills Comcast Committee. We did spend quite a bit of time reviewing this franchise agreement. And with input from Heritage, and I think it's a pretty fair and accurate document at this point. But it's there for everyone to review.
Well, in the past, those have been some interesting nights when those agreements have come up for renewal, because it brings out a lot of people and a lot of issues. So you may have taken care of them. We'll see.
It's been
Yeah,
6 months, right? It was almost 6 months going through this.
Yeah, really.
And
I think the last time was up for renewal. It probably was 6 months of public hearing. I mean, I think it went like 5 months, right, Tom? Didn't it? Something like that. They just kept coming back and back and back and back and back.
well, this time we had the public involved in it, I guess, if that's.
Well, I remember holding a town board meeting when we discussed this over the activity center. That was one of our on the road town board meetings.
Yeah.
That actually on site over there with Comcast. So we had them right in the public hearing. So
I mean, you almost got to tip my hat to Gloria Anderson, who was the sort of the legal scribe representing Heritage Hills. I mean, she's like a steel trap.
no, and you know, they acquired additional buildings and negotiated in this franchise agreement that Comcast will extend their cable service to those buildings with no charge. So, you know, if I ever need anyone to negotiate for me, Gloria Anderson's the one I'd want to work with me.
I mean, they actually moved the monopoly. Could you imagine that?
Yeah. True.
Hey, Rick, I have a real-time question for you.
Okay.
As I sat here, I got about 3 texts, and Anthony probably heard it also. People are wondering, lately there's been very low-flying helicopters. I just had one go over our house, and they're wondering if, I have no idea what it is. Any idea or no?
I just answered a text. I didn't know what time. The question they asked of me was, any reports as to why there are low-flying helicopters? I didn't know what time of day. I know Nice Egg flies to check their lines, but it's not.
This was about 45 minutes ago.
It looked like Blackhawks. They flew over town hall. They were
they were very low. So okay, I just didn't know, but that's you know, it was about
Generally
45 minutes
speaking,
ago.
because they're so low, these are military helicopters, not civil.
No, you
And
can't make that
they
assumption.
generally don't report to anybody.
Well, there you go.
Okay. I just want to be able to tell the people who texted me.
Right.
Well, they shook the house as they went right over here.
They did. It was crazy.
Turned the
I-
camera off and
Same
were
here.
running out to see where they were going.
I got up and went out on my deck to check it out.
Wow.
Also, they were so low.
All right. We may never know, but we will make inquiries.
Okay.
So, which is a good segue into public comment. Is there anyone out there that hasn't had a chance to give public comment? Okay, hearing none, I'll make a motion to close public comment.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So moved. Okay, our next meeting will be March 11th, Town Board regular meeting. And, you know, we don't have, other than, you know, this is the informal part of our closing where we have fun facts and all those other good things. We don't have a lot of things to announce because frankly, there's not a lot happening out there. Once again,
I'll give you a fun fact, Rick, if you want.
well, I just want to reiterate before I turn it over to you guys to the entertainment section.
Yeah.
That once again, we're, you know, 6 new cases. You know, we're down, what did I say? 71 active in the community. We haven't seen those numbers for quite some time. So we're doing what we got to do. Stay safe and wear a mask, wash your hands. Okay,
I'm going
away.
first.
What?
I'm going first before somebody steals my thunder.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah, you are Miss Announcement. Go ahead.
I had to beat the bushes for this.
Okay.
So on this day, March 4th, in 1793,
Wow.
George Washington took his second term in office. That was his inauguration. And on March 4th in 1797, he left office. Rich, that one was for you.
Rich was there. Rich was there, actually.
No, I was not. I was there on March 4th, 1789, when it first went into effect. I missed the second one. I'm sorry.
No, but that was for the social studies teacher in the group. That was my history.
Very good. I did have that one. You're right.
Rich, I'll tell you, you really hold up.
That
well
was changed in
under-
1933, by the way.
Well, you hold up very well under time travel that you've been undergoing.
Well, you know, I take my vitamins.
And Rich, in 1933, that was which amendment to the U.S. Constitution? That was my fun fact.
I believe that
The
was
20, right?
21st, I think. Was it
20.
20th to 20th? Yeah. Because it was too long a lag from November to March.
Right, right. But
And
not
then
in the
they
old days,
they
which
should
is why
change
they
that.
had it.
This is like a Jeopardy game with these guys, all the answers, you know?
I
I
will
think
tell
I'm
you,
in, I think I'm in the negatives.
Yeah, I
there's
mean,
not a
you know.
lot that happened on March 4th in history. That was the best I could come up with.
Well,
Well,
we do have a new baby born on March 4th.
There we
So
go.
I have a name. It's Amelia,
Oh, nice.
live from Denver, Colorado.
Oh, Amelia.
Yeah,
Nice.
cool.
Very nice.
An Earhart.
Fun.
And Bill knows where she is. Bill has flown with her.
I just can't say.
Where is that plane, Bill?
Okay,
South
if there's,
Pacific.
if there's no further business of the board, I'll make a motion to close the town board work session.
Second,
Second.
All in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Aye, so moved. And good night, Somers.
Well, good night,
So long,
everybody.
guys.
Good
Thanks,
night.
everybody, for-
Charlotte made the whole meeting
Thank you,
too.
Paul.
Good night. Yeah,
Thank you,
it
guys.
was my first, I must say, and I did enjoy it. You guys do a lot of good work, and thank you for letting me be part of the process.
Twice a
Thanks,
month, Charlotte. Twice a month we do this.
Hey,
See
you
you next
survived that
week.
whole thing. Bless her.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.